Hi Music 103B students. Hope you're doing well. Today's video is about modulation, and we're going to talk about two things in particular before we look at examples that modulate. One of those things we're going to look at is called closely related keys. So I want to make sure you understand what it means to be a closely related key to the first tonic. And then we're going to look at two different closely related keys and try to determine what are the possible common chords between those two keys. So let's start our discussion with closely related keys. Closely related keys are keys that have the same key signature or one accidental less or one accidental more, depending on where you are in the circle of fifths. Let's take G major as our example. Well, if the home key, the tonic key that is G major, we know that E minor is also closely related because it's the relative key, right? So G major and E minor, not only are they relative keys, but they're also closely related keys. They have the same pitch content. The only difference, of course, is that sometimes in E minor you might have a D sharp or even possibly a C sharp. But if you use natural minor, they have the exact same pitch content. Now, what I was saying is if you go one more sharp from G major, one more accidental, you would have D major, right? These keys have one sharp, and then D major and B minor have two sharps. So the home key, again, the tonic key of the piece is G major. One more sharp would be keys of D major and B minor. And then we're also going to look at keys that have one less sharp. One less sharp than G is the key of C, 0 sharps or flats. And of course, the relative key is A minor. So given this tonic key of G major, these are the 5 closely related keys. Now there are actually a couple different ways that you can think about closely related keys. I find this to be the easiest, the way they just went over, and that is, if we know this is the home key and it has one sharp, we're looking at keys that have one less accidental and one more accidental. So keys with 0 sharps and keys with 2 sharps. You have to consider both the major key and its relative minor. But it also is a fact that if you start on G major and you write out all the diatonic chords in the key of G major, all of those major and minor triads are actually representative of closely related keys to the first key. So let me just finish that. So 1 in the key of G is G, 2 is A minor, 3 is B minor, 4 is C major, 5 is D major, and 6 is E minor. Now, of course, 7 is a diminished triad. It does not represent a key area. But notice how all of these chords that I just came up with are the same ones that we looked at earlier in a little bit different way. Okay, so you can actually take all of the major and minor triads in the context of the home key, and those are representative of key areas, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, that are closely related to the first key. That actually works too. Another way to think about it is go on the circle of fifths, and here's just a little look at some of the chords that you would find, some of the keys that you would find in the circle of fifths. And if G is the home key, you basically just look at all the keys that are surrounding that on the circle of fifths. So you can see all the closely related keys that we just looked at from over here and down here. Same answers. I find this to be a little less valuable because it, of course, relies on you writing out the circle of fifths. So I don't think it's the best way to think about it, but it is a fact that also is true. Okay, what if your home key was E flat major? What are the closely related keys to E flat? Well, think about it this way. E flat major has 3 flats. So we're looking for keys that either have the same key signature or one more flat or one less flat. Keys with 3 flats include the home key of E flat major and C minor, the relative key. Keys with 4 flats include A flat major and F minor. And keys with 2 flats would be B flat major and G minor. Okay, so those are the close related keys to E flat major. Now, if you wanted to look at it as all the major and minor triads in the key of E flat, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What if the tonic key is a minor key? Here's an example that says the tonic key of the piece or the movement is C sharp minor. Well, C sharp minor has 4 sharps. It's the same process, really. You're going to look at keys that have 1 less sharp, and you're going to look at keys that have 1 more sharp. It doesn't really matter what order they're in. We will learn later that it's more common to modulate to certain keys given that first tonic key, but really when it comes down to being closely related, they're all treated equal. Now remember, the relative key is also closely related, so C sharp minor and E major. Keys with 3 sharps? Well, the minor key with 3 sharps is F sharp minor. Major key with 3 sharps is A major. And then keys with 5 sharps include G sharp minor and its relative B major. So all of these keys are closely related to C sharp minor. Now, it is also a fact that you can look at it in the same way that we looked at the major example, and that is if you spell all the major and minor triads in the key of C sharp minor, you'll come up with the same letter names. Now, keep in mind that when you do that, what you're actually doing is spelling the chords in natural minor. And when you spell the chords in natural minor, you come up with these qualities. So natural minor, remember, is using the regular scale degree 6 and 7 from the key signature. Notice I left 2 out because 2 is diminished and it does not represent a key area. So these are the triads, minus the 2 diminished, that you would find in natural minor. So in C sharp minor, 3 is E, 4 would be F sharp minor, 5, which very rarely would ever occur, but if it did, it would be minor in natural minor, right? 6 and 7, which again is less common than the diminished 7. Notice we came up with the same chords from above, right? Okay, so you can think about it either way. You can also think about it in relationship to the circle of fifths, but again, I don't think that's as valuable. It's not as quick. I tend to like to think about it in this way. You just say, all right, keys with 4 sharps, keys with 1 less sharp, and keys with 1 more sharp. All right, I just wanted to go over a couple more examples with you. So let's say that your tonic key is F sharp major. Well, that key has 6 sharps. So we're going to be looking for closely related keys that have 1 less sharp and 1 more sharp. Of course, the relative key also has the same key signature. Keys with 5 sharps, B major, G sharp minor, and keys with 7 sharps, C sharp major and A sharp minor. Now, if you want to make sure you're correct, you can double check and say, here's the 1 chord in F sharp, 2 would be minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor. All right, let's take a minor key now example. Before we did C sharp minor, let's take a look at a flat minor key. How about F minor? Okay, so F minor has 4 flats, right? So we're looking for keys that have 1 more flat and 1 less flat, and the same key signature. So of course the relative key is A flat, and then keys with 3 flats. Sometimes it's actually easier to think the major key first, right? And then the relative minor, doesn't matter which order you put them in. And then 5 flats, D flat major, B flat minor. And again, if you're thinking about it in relationship to the home key, this is 1, 2 is diminished. Here's major 3, here's minor 4, here's minor 5, major 6, major 7. Coming out of relative minor. All right, as practice, I would like you to try this one. So please tell me the closely related keys to B minor. Go ahead and pause the video, and then when you're finished, come on back and check out the answer. All right, closely related keys to B minor. So B minor, of course, has two sharps, which means that D major also is closely related, the relative key. Keys with one sharp include G major and E minor. And keys with one more accidental, three sharps, would be A major and F sharp minor. Right? So keys with two sharps, keys with one less sharp, and keys with one more sharp. And again, this would be 1, 2 is diminished, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, here's another one for you to try. Go ahead and tell me the closely related keys to G flat major. And again, go ahead and pause the video, complete your work, and then check back for the answer. All right, so G flat major, let's see, that has 6 flats, right? The relative key is E flat minor. Now you're also going to have keys that have one less flat and keys with one more flat, right? So remember, closely related keys, keys with the same key signature, or keys that have one less accidental or one more accidental, whether it be sharps or flats. Again, it depends on where you are in the circle of fifths. All right, so keys with 5 flats would be D flat major and B flat minor. And then keys with 7 flats would be C flat major and A flat minor. And again, if you want to double check, here's 1, 2, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, major 5, minor 6. They all relate back to the tonic key as key areas that represent closely related keys to the first tonic. Now, a lot of times I'll get this question, well, what if your first key is C flat major and you can't have one more flat? Right? So we can actually look at that too. But if you have the home key of being C flat major, and say the composer wanted to go to a key that was the sound of a theoretical key that had 8 flats. Of course, it doesn't exist, right? So what you actually have to do is think about enharmonic keys to that first key. So when you're looking for the answer for something like this, and you won't have to do it for the test or for your homework, but I wanted to show you anyways, you would think about the relative key as always, and then keys with one less flat, one less accidental. So G flat major and E flat minor. But then you're faced with this dilemma. What are keys that have one more flat than 7 flats? Well, notice there is this trend that if you start on this key, you're going up a fourth this way, sorry, and down a fourth, right? So if we start at C flat and we go to the G flat, then we also need F flat. Now, of course, F flat is not a real key. So instead, you're going to use the key of E major and C sharp minor. So it actually ends up that the system kind of fails after a while because you don't have A flats. But if a composer wants to go to the sound of what F flat major would sound like, he or she could just use E major, the enharmonic key. Okay. So again, don't worry about that for this chapter or for the exam or for any of your homework. You won't have it. But in case you were wondering about that, you would just basically go to a key that was a 5th above and also a key that was a 4th above the home key for major. And that would give you the same answer. But notice it's enharmonic because there is no key of F flat major or D flat minor. All right, now that we understand the concept of closely related keys, we can look at a key, the home key, and then another key where we're modulating to and determine which chords between these two keys could be used as common chords in a modulation. By the way, the reason why we're looking at closely related keys is because when composers first started to move or modulate between one key and the next, they would use these closely related keys simply because the relationship is less jarring and more smooth. And really the reason for that is because there's so much common pitch content between keys that are closely related. They have so many common pitches and so many common chords. And because of that, it really makes a smoother transition between the keys. So we'll be looking at first at modulations that are closely related to one another and that also use common chords. There are other ways to modulate, but this is one of the primary ways that composers negotiated this kind of modulation in the Baroque, classical, and Romantic periods. All right, so let's start with this example. And I'm going to use the same format that your homework uses and also what you'll see on the exam for this part, and also that's in the book, okay? So the first key is C major. So this is the tonic key of the piece. And then imagine that there is a move or a modulation to another key. And that new key is the key of F. So what you want to do to figure out what chords could be possible chords between them is to list all the chords in the first key and list all the chords in the second key and line them up so that you have like letter names. And you can see which ones are the same and which ones are not the same. Now, just to let you know, if you look at the bottom of page 293 in your textbook, you will see the same format. The example in the textbook is between the key of B flat major and the key of F major. So I'll do a little bit different example here for you. So the first thing you want to do is just list the triads that you would have in the key of C major, the first key. So in the first key of C major, we know that major chord on 1, minor chord on 2, minor chord on 3, major chord on 4, and so on, right? So you're listing the diatonic Roman numerals first. Oh, by the way, it is possible to use a diminished chord as a common chord. So you do want to include the diminished chord as well. Then you're going to list the letter names of the chords, sort of like a lead sheet symbol. So 1 is C major, 2 in the key of C major is D minor, 3 in the key of C major is E minor, 4 is F major, 5 is G major, 6 is A minor, and then the 7 chord in the key of C major is B diminished. Okay, now the trick to it is that you want to make sure that you're lining up alike letter names. So if you're in the key of F after moving from the key of C, so you're starting in the key of C, that's a tonic key, and you're modulating to the key of F. So if you're going to the key of F, you want to make sure that you start here with your 1, because you're going to line up the same letter names, okay? So in the key of F, 1 is F. In the key of F major, 2 is G minor. In the key of F major, 3 is A minor. In the key of F major, 4 is B flat major. Now remember, you have to use the notes from the key signature, right? So there is a B flat in the key of F. In the key of F, the 5 chord is C. The 6th chord is D minor. And the 7th chord is E diminished. Okay, now once you have written all the Roman numerals and letter names for both keys, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, F major, G minor, A minor, B flat major, C major, D minor, E diminished for F major. Once you've done that and you line them up so that you can compare alike letter names, then put a box around the ones that are possible common chords. You can see that these chords are common between the key of C and the key of F. That makes them possible common chords. This pair of keys also works because they're both D minor, 2 in the key of C major, and 6 in the key of F major is D minor. This pair does not work. 4 in the key of C and 1 in the key of F works as a possible common chord. No, and yes. Now, what you will find with key relationships that are a fourth or a fifth away, right? C up to F is a fourth away, fourth up or a fifth down, is that there will be 4 pairs that are possibly common chords. But the thing is they're not all created equal. In other words, some of them work better than other ones. The ones that work the best lead to the new dominant in the new key better. So when you have a modulation from the key of C to the key of F, what you want to hear in the key of F is the dominant in that key to signal a modulation. Now, the new dominant will often be a 5 or a 5/7. So if you're in the key of F, dominant is C, or the 5/7 is C7. But it also could be a diminished chord, a leading tone chord. So it could be E diminished or E half diminished seventh, right? Those are all what we consider to be dominant function chords. The chords on 5 and the leading tone chords, both triads and seventh chords. So imagine that you were going to precede the new dominant in the key of F with one of these scenarios. You can see that this one definitely works the best because 1 in the new key logically precedes the 5 or the 5/7 in that new key. Whereas 5 that's going to be confusing because 1 becoming 5 and then you're going to hear 5 next in this key. So this one's not so valuable. 6 does not gracefully go to the new 5 because 6 doesn't go to 5 in the flowchart, and neither does 3 going to 5. So if you modulate from the key of C to the key of F, this chord will often be used by composers to be your common chord. So again, the ones that are most valuable, the ones that have the most leading power, the most chord progression, the best way that you think about it in a real chord progression are the ones where the new chord in the new key leads to 5 nicely. We'll explore that again in one more example. All right, here's another example. And the first key, the tonic key of the piece, is E major. And then we're going to modulate to the key of B major. And again, the idea is to show what chords could possibly be used as common chords. And then we'll go one step farther to say which pairs would be the most valuable, which ones would lead to the new 5 the most in the most graceful way. All right, so in the first key, list your triad, Roman numeral triads. By the way, it is possible to use a 7th chord as a common chord, but listing the triads really does get the job done in terms of just thinking about it. So E major is 1. 2 in the key of E major is F sharp minor. Again, make sure you use the key signature, right? 3 is G sharp minor. 4 is A major. 5 is B major. 6 is C sharp minor. And 7 is D sharp diminished. So these are the diatonic chords in the key of E major, the ones that belong to the key signature. Now we're going to look at the diatonic chords in the key of B major and see if we can line them up and find alike letter names of the same quality, that is. And we're going to start here, right? Because in the key of B major, of course, B major is 1. So you want to line up alike letter names, and then we're going to see if they're the same quality. If the chords are the same quality, then we know that we've found a possible common chord between the two keys. All right, I'm going to sketch in the Roman numerals first, and then I'll go back and put in the pop chord or lead sheet symbols. All right, so 1 is B major. 2 in the key of B major is C sharp minor. 3 in the key of B major is D sharp minor. 4 in the key of B major is E major. 5 is F sharp major. 6 in the key of B major is G sharp minor. And then the 7 diminished chord is A sharp diminished. Okay, and again, the last step is to see which ones could be used as common chords between the first key of E major and the new key or the second key of B major. So here is a possible E major chord, which is 1 in the key of E and 4 in the key of B. This one does not work because the letter names are of different quality. This one could work. No. Yes to this one. And yes to this one. And no to the last pair. Now again, because these keys were a fifth or a fourth apart, actually from E to B is a fifth up, you have 4 possible pairs. In the other one that we did, it was a fourth up. And you can see that that yields the chords in a different position when you follow the same format. But you're still going to have 4 possible common chords. All right, now the last thing that I like to think about is which ones are the most valuable. The common chords that have the most value and that occur most often precede 5 in this new key. Now we know that 4 goes to 5, 6 does not typically go to 5, 1 can go to 5, and 2 can go to 5. So in this key relationship between E major and B major, these common chords are used more often than this one, simply because the next chord, usually after the common chord, is going to be the new dominant, the dominant in the new key. Now remember, the dominant in the new key can be 5 or 5/7. So in this key, it's going to be F sharp major, right? Or F sharp dominant 7th. It could also be a leading tone chord though. It could be a leading tone triad, or in a major key, of course, it would be a half diminished 7th chord. So in this key of B, it would be A sharp diminished or A sharp half diminished 7th. All of these chords, 5, 5, 7, the leading tone triad, and the half diminished 7th chord in a major key, all of those chords qualify as the new dominant, a chord that would lead to the new tonic. Okay? All right, so 1 becomes 4, leads to the new 5, 5 becomes 1 and leads to the new 5, or 6 becomes 2 and leads to the new 5. All right, in this example, the tonic key is A flat major. Then there's a modulation to the key of E flat major. So your first key is A flat major, and your second key is E flat major. And I'd like you to go ahead and see if you can complete this one. So go ahead and pause the video and complete the same format that I just did for you twice in a row here, and then come back and check your answer. All right, so the first key of A flat major, go ahead and sketch out your Roman numerals for the triads. By the way, it's also possible to think about common chords between 2 minor keys or a major key and a minor key. Only thing is, though, it's a little bit more difficult because of the variability that's built into minor keys. Because remember, there are more than just 7 diatonic chords in minor keys, because it's possible to have the raised number 6 and the raised number 7 scale degree. So for the purposes of the class this semester, we're just going to stick with major keys to learn about this relationship. But again, it is possible to think about a major to a minor or 2 minor keys as well. All right, so it's checking your answer here. Careful to make sure that you're in the key of A flat. So A flat is 1, B flat minor is 2, C minor is 3, 4 is D flat major, 5 is E flat major, 6 is F minor, and 7 is G diminished. Diatonic chords in the key of A flat major. Now you're going to line up the letter names in the key of E flat. So right here is where you're going to start with a tonic. And then you're just going to write the diatonic chords in the key of E flat major. Okay, so 1 is E flat, 2 is F minor, 3 is G minor, 4, A flat major, 5 is B flat major, 6 is C minor, and 7 is D diminished. And again, you're coming up with the same results, just different chords in different keys. 1 can become 4 as a common chord, 3 becoming 6, 5 becomes 1. And the F minor chord could also be used as a common chord. Now remember, the ones that lead to the new dominant in the key that you're moving towards, in this case E flat major, are going to be a little bit more valuable, going to be used a little more often. So 4 to 5, 1 to 5 or 7, 2 to 5 or 7. More common than 6 going to 5 or 7. All right, well, to finish up this video that was an introduction to the common chord modulation, I wanted to show you a couple of examples from the textbook. This is on page 295, example 18-4. Let's take a listen to it to begin. All right, well, this example has 2 phrases, and you'll notice that the first phrase is in the key of C major and ends with a half cadence. Now, at this point, you should be hearing C major as still tonic. So again, first phrase, C major, half cadence. Here's one. The second phrase, however, modulates to the key of G major. And you can hear that there's an authentic cadence. It's actually a perfect authentic cadence in G major at the end of the second phrase. And now you should be hearing G major as your new tonic. Well, if you've determined that phrase 1 is in the key of C major, and phrase 2 ends in the key of G major, you know there's a modulation somewhere between the phrase ending here and the phrase ending here. So what you want to do is you want to search right after the first cadence and look for the first new dominant. Now, just a little bit of what that means. In order to modulate to the key of G, the composer will most often write some sort of 5 or 7 diminished in that new key. That's what's called the new dominant. Now keep in mind that in terms of dominant function chords, of course 5 and 5/7 are dominant chords, but 7 diminished triad and 7 half diminished 7th chord, or 7 fully diminished 7th chord if you're in minor, those are also dominant function type chords. Those are chords that precede tonic typically, right? So when I say look for the new dominant, you want to look for a 5 or a 7. Okay, so in this case, in the key of G major, you're looking for D major, which is 5, or D7, which is 5/7, or you're looking for F sharp diminished, which is 7 diminished, or F sharp half diminished 7th, which is 7 half diminished 7 in the key of G major. Now, of course, 5 and 7 both share the leading tone. And in the key of G major, the leading tone is F sharp. Notice in this example, the new dominant is right here. So you're really hearing this chord as the one that's moving you to the new key. Now what you want to do is once you've located the new dominant, back up 1 chord to find your common chord. So here's the new dominant, we backed up 1 chord, and often that will be your common chord. Not all the time, but very often. And in all the examples that we'll be looking at together this semester, that will be true, and also the examples that are on your final project piece, that will also hold true for that. Okay, so we found the dominant in the new key. We backed up a chord to find our common chord. You can see the chord here is C major. In the key of C major is 1. In the key that we're moving towards, the new key of G major, C major is 4. So look at the symbol that's used. This is the common chord symbol. You just make this symbol, and then you put the new key in there. The top part of it's in the old key, and the bottom part is in the new key. All the Roman numerals that follow are now in this new key. So it's like a transition point. And I think you would agree that you don't really hear the modulation happening here. You really hear it starting to form where you hear the F sharp, because the F sharp is outside the key signature. It's outside the key signature of C major, and it belongs to the new key of G as the leading tone. You can see it here again. By the way, this is a tone that is a part of a secondary chord, a leading tone chord of 2 in the new key. Okay, so listen to it and see if you can hear that relationship. So we're going along from the beginning in C. There's a half cadence. You're still hearing C major as tonic. Now the second phrase, and it's that F sharp that really draws your attention to knowing that we're in that new key. Okay, and as we've looked at in some of the earlier videos that you watched, and also by reading the book, it also helps to have a predominant chord in that new key. And if you have a leading tone chord or a dominant of that predominant chord, then you're pretty secure that you're in the new key center. So by the time you get here, yeah, you definitely feel like that's your new tonic. All right, this is on page 296 of your textbook, and it's example 18-6. Let's take a listen to it. Well, this example begins in the key of D minor and modulates to the key of F major. Notice that D minor and F major are not only closely related keys, but they're also relative keys. Now, one of the differences between the keys, of course, is that in D minor, you're going to have a C sharp more than likely, which is a part of the 5 and the 7 chord. But then in the key of F, you're probably going to have C naturals, right? Well, C naturals are diatonic, at least. So in D minor, you're going to expect C sharps, and in the key of F major, you're going to expect C naturals. But still, there's a lot of pitch content that is similar between D minor and F major. Now, as you're looking for the common chord in these modulations, and you know that you start in one key and then the other, what you want to do is look for the first dominant in the new key. So if you're starting in D minor and you're moving to the key of F major, the new dominant in the key of F is going to be 5 or 5/7 or 7 diminished, 7 half diminished 7. So you're looking for a C chord, C7, E diminished, E half diminished 7. These are all the new dominants, right? Now you can see the book has already labeled the chords for us. We can see the new dominant here, C, E, G. They're including this note as being the base of the entire measure. That's why they have it marked as 5/4/2. They did that earlier as well. You can see that they said the D is really the functioning bass note here, and now the B flat and the A here. Okay, so here's the new dominant, right? In the key of F, C7. Back up a chord to find your common chord. So if the new dominant is here, the C chord or the C7 chord, back up a chord. And what we found here is a B flat major chord. It's missing the 5th, but you still hear the B flat and the D as the part of the 6th chord in the key of D minor. Okay, so B flat major in the key of D minor is number 6. And then in the key of F major, the new key, B flat major is 4. So here's your common chord. 6 becomes 4. By the way, sometimes books and theorists refer to this as a pivot chord because you can see that's really what it does, is it acts as a pivot point between the two keys. Of course, it's also a common chord because this B flat major chord occurs as a diatonic chord in D minor, but it also occurs as a diatonic chord in F major. 6 in D, 4 in F major. Again, it's really important to notice where the placement of that common chord is. It occurs typically right before the new dominant. Okay, and I wanted to play it for you again. Notice that you don't really sense the modulation until you hear this C7 chord going to F. And then when you hear the 2-5-1 at the end, then you know you've really arrived in the new key.